It's Friday, June 16th, 2023. Let's start off with our traditional shill segment, which is to say go to patreon.com/ozonightmare if you'd like to support the show via that channel. You can also go over to the show homepage, and to your right if you are facing your computer, to your left if you're facing away, which will make it tough to click on the boxes, but you could do it, I guess, if you're really good or using a mirror. You will see an array of rounded square boxes. They have different pictures in them. One at the bottom has a PayPal symbol that you can use for PayPal donation if that's your preferred method of donating to things. You will see a little book with a bookmark. Clicking that will take you to Lando's Amazon author page. You'll also see one with a skull. If you click that, that will take you to my link tree. Or to death, yes. If you believe the internet can kill you, then don't click on that. And the code Ozone, to my knowledge, still will give you 2 months free on Libsyn if you would like to start a podcast and then wonder why you did so many years later. Or not. You may not. But you can at least not pay for it for a little while and figure out whether it's hell on earth or something you want to keep doing. I didn't know when I started. So that's our shill segment. Forgive me a little bit. I've been driving for a long time today, so I may be a bit spacey, but I think I got it all correct. I don't think I missed anything. No, I didn't. No, we're good.
I'm surprised you're recording. Sorry, I'm a bit... We've had forest fire weather out here of late, which is hilarious.
Oh, that's just California all the time.
Yeah. I know, but that's to say, we've had California weather out here. So between that and the pollen, my throat's a bit... Ugh. But man, New York looked like a hellscape there for a couple days.
Yeah, people thanks to fires from Canada. I believe it was British... No, Nova Scotia? I think it was Nova Scotia.
No, I thought it was the Nova Scotia fires, but it was fires further west that came down. Yeah, they actually came down over the country and then out towards the coast. So if you look at a map, it's really funny because the Vermont was mostly mist. Like we got it early when it was coming down, but we missed it almost all of it.
Yeah, we got lucky then because it was.
We got like a light dusting, so but it's still, it's enough to irritate. So I got an art thing for you. So the Brooklyn Museum has an exhibition called Pablo-matic.
Oh, I read about is this the one that's curated by the comedian? Is that this one?
Picasso, okay, according to Hannah Gadsby, right? Now she is one of the curators because there's two other women who help.
Right, but she's the headline.
But essentially,
she's the show, the showpiece.
Yeah, and like I'll be honest, I don't like Hannah Gadsby, and it's not because people are always going to be like, well, you don't like her because she's an outspoken lesbian. No, not at all. I find her obnoxious.
I don't even know who she is. So, I mean, this is
then you should.
I've heard the name. I've never seen the actual.
You should sit down and watch her comedy hour.
No, I don't. I honestly, and listen, I've realized that I don't really respond to most comedians. I just don't.
Interesting. Well, the first half of it is like a decent comedy show. The second half of it is an angry LGBTQ kind of gender TED conference
So she's the reverse Dennis Miller now.
Oh, yeah.
Because Dennis Miller's like that now. When I try to watch his specials, it's just like, okay, man, not you're just sermonizing on why you're now on the political right. And that's I don't the thing care. It's not funny anymore.
But the second half of the show, I felt like I was being like personally yelled at.
Man, and that's exactly what he does. Because his last special, there's funny bits in the beginning, and then it just starts getting bitter and mean and personal.
And she starts talking about like how a joke is funny, but then when she tells you the true story, how she was beaten for being a lesbian, it's not funny. And I'm like, well, I know it's not funny. That's why I'm not laughing at you getting beaten for being a lesbian. I'm laughing at a joke that you made. Right, and that's what it is. It's like the first half we're all laughing and having a good time, and the second half is her basically opening up too much and then being angry with the world. And it's like the second half is a TED conference I wouldn't have watched. I find Hannah Gadsby to be kind of annoying. She's definitely got some kind of cleverness. She's definitely smart, and when she was being funny, she was very funny. But, you know, when someone's a comedian, but you almost get the sense that they don't really want to be a comedian. I don't know.
Yes. I'm telling that's Dennis Miller now.
Yeah.
It's like the comedian thing is just so that he can keep putting that on his business card. But he really doesn't have any interest in the comedy anymore.
Yeah. And when I've seen her on other things, because like she's popped up on like some British panel shows and stuff like that, she's very clever and she's very funny. I just did not enjoy her comedy hour. So if I see her pop up on something, I won't be adverse to seeing it. I just don't trust her comedy show. And the worst part is that my wife and I probably would have shut it off because like we have kind of a rule that if like we don't laugh for 10 minutes, it's not comedy anymore. And you know, like so when we put like a comedy show on, if one of us doesn't laugh in the first 10 minutes, it goes off. They've got 10 minutes to get it right. And with Hannah Gadsby, it's like we were halfway through the show, and then suddenly nobody was laughing, and we had to keep it on because we were watching it with my oldest, and my oldest was very enthralled with it, so we had to leave it on. But my wife and I were both like, yeah, like you almost want to like feign stomach illness at that point and go hide in the bathroom, and do something else, you know. Anyway. So Hannah Gadsby is one of the curators for this show. And I was curious about this because a lot of people like kind of bagged on it. And like the show is basically there to show that Picasso was a bastard, right? That is essentially the entire premise of the show. Here is a bunch of Picasso paintings. Here is a bunch of paintings of feminist women. But none who have any connection to Picasso too. That was really interesting is that they didn't put any women who were like directly affected by Picasso. It was like women who had kind of nothing to do with him, just putting their art kind of against his. And what's amusing to me is that they kept so there's two curators and there's Hannah Gadsby, and their whole idea seems to be the fact that, well, everyone thinks Picasso is a genius. The word Picasso is basically like calling someone a genius, and they have such a view of him that they want to tear down, right? But what's fascinating to me, and I think perhaps to you might have the same reaction, is that I don't particularly like Picasso. I enjoy his early work, but I find that once he started getting kind of Crayola kindergartenish, I lost interest. And I don't consider him to be some sort of like, he's not Da Vinci. He's not Michelangelo. He's not, he is not, he's not a Van Gogh. He's not even a Klimt. I love Klimt, and it's one of those things where like what's going on is I think they're coming in with the fact that to some degree they think he's a genius, but they want you to understand that he was a terrible person. Right. And what's interesting is that they then go on to say, but we just want people to make up their own minds about it. And you're like, yeah, but the entire point of your show is Picasso was a bastard. And so they have all these like blurbs by Hannah Gadsby next to his paintings, essentially kind of bad mouthing him. Right. And it was just such a, like, I was reading about it. I'm like, I almost want to go see this show just because, like, I'm curious what the total package of it is. Like, you're basically putting Picasso on a pedestal as you scream that you don't want Picasso on a pedestal. And you're telling people to make up their own minds, but then you are basically pumping their heads with he's considered a genius. He's incredible, but he was a terrible person. But make up your own mind. And you're kind of like, wouldn't it be better to let Picasso in general kind of just go? Like, I find that everybody needs to make a definitive statement about history. Like, my wife and I jokingly call this planting their flag. Like, it's not enough to know that something is going away. You have to plant your flag so everybody knows it. And it's the whole, like, listen, Picasso's not exactly popular with the youngins, right? I don't exactly see a lot of millennials going on about Picasso. Is his name synonymous with a great painter? Yeah, so is Da Vinci, so is others. But, like, how many people would you say have actually gone to a museum, looked at a Picasso, and even registered it for more than, like, a minute at this point?
Probably not many, or not many understood that they were even looking at a Picasso because his work changed depending on when you look at it so radically.
Yeah, especially if you start with late Picasso rather than early Picasso. And I find that at that point you look at the Picasso paintings and you go, Jesus Christ, a 12-year-old could do this, right? It's almost the same, I feel bad because it's like it's the whole thing with Jackson Pollock, where people see Jackson Pollock stuff and they're like, he just threw paint at a wall. But I feel like Picasso, on a cultural level, is beginning to mean less and less and less, right up until the moment where someone basically puts him back on a pedestal and goes, see this guy? You guys said he's a genius and he's a terrible person. And you're like, yeah, but he was being culturally forgotten at this point. It's like there's a part of my brain that was like, you're re-erecting Confederate statues to go on about how awful Confederate statues are. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, and like,
I know what you mean.
Yeah, and the thing is, I'm not against the ideas that Picasso was an awful person. Picasso was an absolute bastard. He was. I pity any woman that had anything to do with him. In fact, history is full of a lot of great artists that were not great husbands and or even lovers. I like, if you want to go through the list of like I'm pretty sure Dali was a bastard as well. Didn't Dali sleep with Geiger's wife?
I think so, but I don't know that that's actually fact or if that's more of a.
I'm curious. Worst.
Let's see.
Great
trying to see.
Painter husbands.
Final years. Well, I mean, he was a lunatic. Let's take a look.
Either way,
it doesn't really matter.
I'm not contrary to the idea that there are many great female painters. There's no difference between male and female painters. There are great men and there are great female painters. Was there any question that Picasso was a bitch? No, Picasso was fucking awful, right? But I just find it amusing that they first established that he's a genius before then attempting to tear him down. Whereas I'm sitting there going, right, so you're going to convince me that he's very important, so now you can try to convince me that he sucks and he shouldn't be important. I was like, but I was already there. Like, and the thing is, from your point of view, does it make any sense?
No, it makes complete sense. Well, okay, sorry. What they're doing doesn't make sense. Why they're doing it the way they're doing it does. So, a couple things.
Yeah.
You said Picasso isn't equivalent to like a Van Gogh.
No, but that's my opinion.
Well,
I was
going to say he is, But I don't particularly like most of his work either. Who he reminds me the most of, and this is an interesting allegory, which you'll pick right up, is Frank Miller. Frank Miller, not in terms of politics. Well, actually, I guess Baxter too. So
No, we went straight to Frank Miller. If we're going to comic book artists, I could see how you would draw a line between those two. Yes.
Well, because early foundational, significant
Miller
works that lots of people were influenced by. Right, and then later,
but then as he went on,
a child could do this. Literally, a child could do this.
Oh, yeah, his art later on.
See what I'm saying? Awful. I mean, the degradation of the person in both work and personality is very clear.
And what's amusing to me is what do you call it? I move. So by the time this show goes out, I will have moved, right? And my office right now is in the basement, and it was basically my office was kind of like Connor McLeod's office in Highlander. Where like it's that round room that's just fully lined with shit, and then the middle of the room is totally open. You remember that? That's kind of what my office is like at home, except it's square. And where I'm moving, I'm gonna have an above ground office, which is amazing. I haven't been in the sun for a while. I haven't been above in like a decade. Anyway, but the room has these vaults on it that you can't put anything against, and I was like, oh, that's cool. I was like, I should cover those the vaulted ceiling bits with art, like just basically get stick tabs, and rather than try to like nail something to the wall, just stick them. I've done it before with smaller paintings, and you can do it with bigger ones as long as you have enough stick tabs. So I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna line those things and just have like a ton of art. And then I had to ask myself, well, shit, who do I want to have up on my walls? And so I started looking around at like the artists that I like, and of course, I have my classical artists that I like. Where I'm gonna go find some Klimt, and I'm gonna go find some Van Gogh and shit like that. I'm also gonna go for some oh my god, I forgot her name, Georgia Keefe, because I like vaginas. What can you say? And some of her vagina paintings are hypnotic. You ever had that? Where you look at one of her paintings, and for a moment you almost feel like you're falling into it.
Oh, I have that with a lot of like oil paintings,
Jesus,
type stuff.
Katsuhiro Otomo. God damn it. Sorry, I forgot Katsuhiro Otomo. You reminded me. But like, I've been on this thing looking at artists and people, and it's like once I finished with like the fine art people, I was like, comic book artists are my artists. So like I've been looking at Art Adams and Frank Whiteley and Frank Cho.
Art Adams just had a Kickstarter for a collection of his stuff, which of course I backed in 2 seconds.
He's got a lot of great prints on his. I was looking for prints. He's got a lot of great prints.
I have a bunch of his sketchbooks. Almost every time he's on a show, I go and get one. So yeah.
I was looking at for Jeff Darrow, stuff like that. But like, Frank Miller, early Frank Miller, I can stand behind. But yes, late Frank Miller,
so
you're like,
that's what I'm saying. Is it's like early work was important, and people looked at it, and it was influential and all that stuff. And then as it went on, you went, oh no, and that's essentially Picasso is the same thing. So,
well, he got I give this to Picasso. I get the sense that he got bored. And he probably got bored because early on, he was very good. And he was probably so good, and he was doing stuff, and he thought, you know what? I'm bored with this. I want to do something different. And you have this.
Or he was being like contrarian about himself. Like, I shall destroy my own. Because that's what a lot of people say his later work is a response to his own work. And I'm like, okay, I don't know.
Maybe. Well, this is like James Joyce in Ulysses. Right? James Joyce wrote Ulysses specifically to fuck with critics. And it worked very well, because to this day, they go on about what a piece of genius it is. Whereas the whole book is James Joyce going, fuck you people. So that's
him. So as far as the show, I've read many of the same things talking about the show and what it is. And it does not seem like it is actually from, and this makes complete sense to me. Is I find this to be Hannah Gadsby had a point she wanted to make about Picasso. Now,
she has, by the way, a degree in art history. So it's not that she doesn't know what she's talking about.
I'm sure she does.
Right.
It doesn't matter. So what I'd be curious about, and I don't know. Actually, it really doesn't matter. But whether this was something she initiated or that the where is it being held? Is it MoMA or something?
Brooklyn Museum.
That's right. Sorry, Brooklyn Museum. Or whether they approached her with the idea. I would be curious where it initiated, because that might reframe a little bit of it for me. Maybe that there was, because if the museum initiated it, maybe there was some, okay, we know you're a big name and we want to have Picasso, but you could pick anybody. And maybe she really just didn't have any interest in it, but they were paying her a bunch of money. And she said, the hell with it, I'll throw something together.
She seems quite passionate about it.
Or she just has the same kind of blunted and inelegant approach to this as she does in her comedy, where there's absolutely a critique, but why, as you said, why not feature the artwork? And many people point this out. Why not feature artwork from women who were directly interacting with Picasso? As opposed to what appears to be random, just women artists.
Picasso there at all? In fact, why not call it Pablo-matic?
Oh, no,
right?
no. I understand that.
Hear me out for a second, right? Call it Pablo-matic, have it be about Picasso, right? But instead, have the art of women that affected him, right? And then have the art of, other great female artists. Because I guess they asked any of the artists who are alive, I think they asked them their opinions on Picasso, right? And I'm kind of like, there you go. I would have found it more interesting if it was a statement piece on Picasso and his legacy with no Picasso. Because then you can talk about the elephant in the room without ever having to have the elephant in the room. Do you know what I mean?
I don't know. That to me may not necessarily be a great idea. I mean, don't get me wrong. I understand where you're coming from, and I do think
otherwise
that the absence
you're putting
of them is bad. It's not good.
You're putting the thing on the pedestal that you want to rip off the pedestal.
But that may reflect, because don't forget, this gets into the art versus artist thing.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I don't know what her take on that is. I didn't read enough to know. So I don't know if she's a person who says, no, you must respect the art regardless of the artist.
No, she's not. She hates the art and the artist.
Well, then this makes no sense. So that makes me think that this is the museum pushing a way of doing something.
But that's what I'm so confused about, because I'm kind of like, you hate the art and you hate... You this is the whole Kevin Spacey movies, right? You don't want to watch Kevin Spacey movies because you find him icky, right?
I do. Where here's he is the focal point as opposed to
this is like you wanting to talk about. This is like you saying, let's do a show where all we do is watch Kevin Spacey movies and talk about how icky he is, right?
Okay, except there is in that example, I would play LA Confidential specifically to highlight the fact of how hypocritical his role in that is. So, because in that, he is a person who is upset because of violence against a homosexual person, yet he himself preyed on homosexual men. So I would show it to say that right there is a humongous hypocritical character for this person to be playing. And I wonder if some of what he was doing informed that, so there is an example.
But you wouldn't want to do a whole show.
Well,
on
I agree.
His movies.
What I don't know enough about is the mechanics of the way the show was architected and put on, because there's three ways that realistically
and the
some
thing
variation.
Is, she was not on her own. There are the two curators who worked with her.
Right. Who are those people? Are they from the museum? Are they?
They're from the museum, and their line was that they were trying to reframe history.
Then I think that this was a misfire from the museum.
But here's the thing: they want to reframe history by having him be something other than an iconic touchstone that is immovable. That is their quote, right? But here's the thing: I don't look at. I wonder if this is like an internal reaction.
Oh no, he is absolutely an artistic milestone. You cannot deny that. His influence on Cubism, collage, many forms of artwork that came after him. No, you could. He is Van Gogh in terms of, or even
his place.
Da Vinci
so you're saying
in terms
his
of that.
place? Yeah, his place is important for what he did.
Yes.
Okay.
He is absolutely one of the great names in artwork in terms of transforming and initiating artistic movements. You can't deny that. You don't have to like his work, because I really don't either. But Cubism really started with him. It was popularized. His early work and the way that he deconstructed forms, that stuff is everywhere. And, now you could say, well, it's just because he did it first. Well, yeah, but he did it first. So, I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't. I'm not saying he was necessarily a quote unquote genius.
Yeah. And so
but,
the this is from the Guardian article. The reframing that they wanted was basically that the guy was a pervert, a bastard, and doesn't deserve time in the sun. He was famously quoted saying that there were two kinds of women, goddesses or doormats.
Okay.
He was awful to women, to those who...
I have to question Gadsby's art background then. Because to say that you strip him of his influence just because of the way he was, okay, well, then you're going to be stripping a lot of stuff. I mean, you don't have to glorify the man, but it is equally... I don't...
And that's why this is tough, right? Because it's
it's not, but I'm just...
he was a bastard, but his art still has an effect on history.
It does.
Whether you like it or not.
Which is not to say... Because there's a nuance to this. Thing everybody hates, nuance. I would have no problem if they... Like, your idea of a show where they never show his work, fine. Fine. You can do that. I really wouldn't have a problem with that. What I would have a problem is if you sit there and say, because he treated women badly, he is no longer someone to be respected as far as his contributions to art. No, I'm sorry. You can't do that. That is, now you are just erasing history. Like, you can contextualize what is fact and what has happened, but you cannot simply say it doesn't exist anymore. We have way too much of that already.
And that's the thing is that you have to, I think you have to look at him and say, hey, listen, he happened. He happened. And
because in that narrative, then, if you were to have a Wikipedia or a history book that says, where did Cubism start? With this guy named Johnny Buford in Tennessee. He liked to paint blocks. Oh, that's how Cubism started. Wow, how have I never heard it? No, fuck you. It was Picasso. I'm sorry. You could say follow it up by saying one of the most miserable human beings in his treatment of women and his views on blah, blah, blah. The same way, yeah, that's what I'm saying is you can't simply erase somebody's effect. What you have to do is then add the context and add the ability for people to understand the difference between the contribution and the contributor.
Maybe that's what they were trying. Maybe that's what they were trying to do, but it just
seems... but that quote says no, it wasn't. No, that's not that quote tells me otherwise. If they said, while recognizing that this is one of the giants in terms of modern art movements, what we want to stress to people is that the person was a reprehensible human being, and that you have to reckon with that in your appreciation or dismissal of the work. Give the audience the option and let them do what they want.
Here's what's fascinating is that they asked the women that they had in the show, they asked them for quotes about Picasso, right? And few of them appear to have a serious bone to pick with Picasso. And one of them, when her quote was, as far as for Picasso, she said, this is, what's her name? Betty Tompkins. She said, my thoughts about Picasso have changed over the course of my career as I've learned more about him as a human. That said, I still think without a doubt he was a great artist despite being a horrible human being.
That's it.
There you go.
That's it.
That's how you do it. And if that had been the context for the show, yes, he was a great artist, but you know what? He was also a piece of shit.
Right.
Like
that is what it should be. Is as with a lot of things, it should be. You should be forced to decide how you interpret art versus artist. There is something to that struggle. There is a value in understanding how you react to things, why you react to things.
Yeah. And the fact that art is more than just the artist. That's what we've come to realize, because it's not the artist's intention that creates your reaction. It's what you bring to the table. And actually, what's funny is that what I kind of feel bad about is somebody who doesn't know anything about Picasso, who just liked the paintings, but otherwise could kind of gone on their way, now is going to look at a Picasso painting and go, I really like this painting, but all I can think about now is the misogyny.
Well, this is like when it came out that
you're ruining the art for people.
When people were talking about Martin Luther King and his womanizing, and there was all this attempt to cover it up because they were like, oh no, and it's like, no, okay, wait a minute, that's not going to stop him being a civil rights pioneer. What are you talking about?
There's a nuance to this guy, he's
a human being, and honestly, actually, if you want to go into his religious roots, he'd probably not want you to be deifying him that way. He would probably want to be recognized as a human being. because he believed in a higher power that doesn't like false gods. So be careful when you start shaving all the rough edges off people, because you're setting up golden cows. And that's kind of not what he'd be all about. It is important to recognize that somebody can be, it's like, I'm sure there is something, I don't know enough about Hitler, but I'm sure there's some, maybe he was kind to cats. I don't know. But you can be a monster and still have something beneficial, and the inverse can be true, and it's fine.
You know what? I'll tell you the only nice thing I ever learned about Hitler. Is that, but it's a double-edged sword, because it's really not nice on the other end, which is that basically Hitler was gassed in World War I in the trenches, right? And because of that, he said that he would never use gas on the battlefield.
Man,
That's
if that ain't the summary, wow, it's so weird you would say something like that, because one of my constant things that I always say is, the world would have a lot less problems if people could actually experience what other people experience and understand the pain that it brings. And for Hitler to say, I'm not using gas because somebody gassed me, man, and yet to do what he
was gassed,
boy.
And he got gassed pretty bad towards the end of World War I. And when when Germany surrendered, he was in hospital from basically wounds from being gassed, right? And so the thing is, he never used gas on the battlefield because he felt it was wrong. Even though he was gassing the Jewish, black, gypsy, art,
I was going to say,
gay
there was definitely an asterisk after that statement.
That's what I mean. Like I said, it's an awful double-edged sword, because on one hand he was like, I will not use gas on these soldiers, but I'm going to gas the rest of you. You know what I mean? Like,
but this is what we're getting at is the context and a full understanding.
Oh, you know what? Listen,
beneficial.
I watched this documentary about Germany and its drug problem in World War II, right? I knew that the Nazis had, I think it's called Prevatin, which was basically like methamphetamines, right? I knew that was like kind of part of the Blitzkrieg, which is that these guys had like essentially like meth pills, and then they were like fucking like so jacked up, and they could fight for like 3 days before finally crashing, right? I didn't realize how fucked up Hitler was. And this isn't even like a hearsay thing, because he had this doctor who was prescribing him all his medicines. And when you hear about the amount of shit that Hitler was taking, and that his doctor was like pushing on him, like, oh, we should take the shot for this and a shot for that, like the weird cocktail of shit that he was on. You know what? His fucking evil madness suddenly starts to make a lot more sense, because this goes to that whole larger view of a person. It's easy to look at Hitler and go, he's a monster. It's harder to look at him and say, but how did you end up there? Right? I think that's one of the most important things in human history, is to, especially when you have someone like, and Ted Kaczynski just died recently, right? The Unabomber.
Oh, yeah.
There's always been a part of me that's kind of like, how did you end up? Because wasn't he like a brilliant programmer or something like that?
Something like that. Yeah, he had some kind of I don't remember what it was, but
and
it might have been programming. You might be right.
And he ended up this solitary
mathematician.
There you go, brilliant mathematician.
I love this. Oh, Ted Kaczynski was an American mathematician and domestic terrorist. Wow.
Yeah, and he ended up a domestic terrorist, mail bombing people, and you're like, how did you get there? Like, what is the? I mean, I'm always fascinated and curious about this line. You know, how do you go from A to B? Like, what is that in between? And with Hitler, it's like, listen, there was already a lot of bad kind of in there, like, you know, very when he was very pro Germany, and then he was also kind of into this idea of eugenics and all this stuff. But like, as things go on, and everything starts to get even more fucked up, and you start to hear about the drugs he was on, I was like, okay. I was like, understanding why people are so bad or why they made the decisions doesn't mean that you excuse them of the decisions. Like, Hitler is not excused because he was fucking drug-addled by the end of the war, right? But it makes you understand some of the whack-ass decisions that he made as what things went on. And on some level, it reframed him. You know, I know there's a lot of neo-Nazi fascists who want to paint Hitler as some kind of like, you know, god, emperor, hero, where the reality was that by the end of the war, he was losing his mind on drugs. And when the Allies bombed the drug factories, he went into withdrawal in the midst of trying to lead a world war. And he shot himself and his girlfriend. Actually, were they married at the end?
I believe they were. I believe.
Yeah, but
so.
like, you know, listen, he shot himself. You know, like it doesn't end well no matter what. But the whole idea is that you start to understand the bigger picture. You know, so like, my father was an awful misogynist, right? Till the day he died, and I always had a problem with it. And I was in a typical Cuban manner. My father was very hands-off. He didn't really have an interest in the raising of children. And I was raised by my mother and my grandmother and her two sisters. I was surrounded by women who were both strong women and yet bowed to the Hispanic misogyny, which is a really tough nuance to understand, let me tell you. But the more I kind of learned about my father and his upbringing, the more I understood where the misogyny came from, like where the programming was from, the kinds of stuff that he saw as a child that made him what he was. It didn't condone it. It didn't make it better. It just made me understand, you know, I think there's a lot of people who don't want to understand because they fear that if they understand something, they then won't be able to hate it. You know what I mean? And like, listen, I hate my father's misogyny. I still hate it, but I understand it. I hate Hitler too, but I understand why he was so fucking crazy at the end. You know what I mean? And like with Picasso, it's like, maybe the problem is that I already knew most of this shit. Like, you know, they're making a stink about something that most people who know art history of any kind know, where they're like, yeah, he was a scumbag. Didn't they make a movie about him where he was a massive scumbag with Ed Harris?
I'm pretty sure. Well, no, that was Pollock is where he was the drunk.
You're right.
Was he Picasso too?
No, it was. I'm screwing it up. Yeah,
you're thinking
Pollock.
of the Pollock.
But
movie.
Pollock, who was a huge alcoholic. Listen, artists, man, they don't always have the best lives. I mean, very often, a lot of the great art we love.
Oh, surviving Picasso, Anthony Hopkins. Maybe that's what you're
Oh,
thinking of.
Jesus Christ, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's that kind of thing. I think it behooves us to try to understand people, especially people who have had an effect on history of whatever kind. And I just don't think people like the fact that it's what you said. You know, they don't like that there is a nuance that you have to sit there. You know, like for me, right? I can watch a movie with what's his name? Fucking hell, we were just talking about him. Usual Suspects.
Spacey.
I can watch a movie with Spacey because, you know, if the movie was written and directed and acted in by Spacey, but most movies are the product of many people coming together to make a movie. So I can watch a movie and accept the fact that Spacey had a small part in it, right?
I mean, I watched Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome and Mel Gibson's in it.
And he's a nut. Yeah, and he's a nut. But that doesn't make it not a great movie because he didn't write and direct and star. It wasn't his passion project. But I have no interest.
The real star, anyway.
I have no interest in seeing The Passion of Christ, which is Mel Gibson's like super project, right? But you know, it is important to know the history. And if the only thing that if people walk away from this Pablo-matic art show with a greater, you know, if their whole point was to basically get the lowest common denominator to understand that Picasso was a scumbag. Good. I mean, if that's really what you were hoping for, is to install a sense of nuance in people, then I can get behind your show. I just don't know if that's what they really wanted, or if they were expecting something far more glorious that I don't think enough people give a shit enough about Picasso at this point for it to matter. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't.
What paintings do you see on a regular basis in the world? that have become pop culturized the most?
Oh, I mean, like Munch's The Scream, of course,
The
is
Scream,
one.
right?
You know, what is it? Starry Night
Mona
by
Lisa.
Van Gogh, Mona Lisa.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
these are
I mean,
the
Klimt's
pop
The Kiss
icon.
shows up a lot.
It does. Yeah, it does. But then nobody goes beyond that. The other day somebody was going on about The Kiss, and I started talking about all the other paintings that Klimt has done. And they were like almost horrified that there were other paintings that the artist had done. They just assumed that it was his only painting. Yes, but it you have these paintings that have become pop cultured, right? And yet nobody knows anything about the artist. Nobody knows anything about Klimt. In fact, a lot of people don't even know that Klimt is the name of the artist who did The Kiss, right?
Sure.
Now, Da Vinci did the Mona Lisa. But do you know anything about Da Vinci? Does anyone know anything other than the fact that he made a helicopter? Like, think about that. Like, the level of not knowing, not giving a shit that most people function at, especially when it comes to fine art. Right?
I agree. Yeah.
Especially when you get to kind of that lowest common denominator of, like, everyday people who don't really have an interest in that kind of thing. And in that respect, then, is that art show even going to reach those people then? Because are those the type of people who are even going to show up at the Brooklyn Museum?
Yeah, I don't think so.
So yeah, I'm not against.
I read one article that said it was meant to get people arguing about it. Well, okay, maybe if it was, it worked.
If that was the intent, then good for them because we're discussing it. But it's not weird for us to discuss this kind of thing, is what I'm saying.
No, you're right.
Whereas other people
and like I said, the problem for me is that quote about let's just erase him from art history, and I'm like, no, I'm sorry, no. You don't have to show him. But she did. Yeah, she's basically saying we want to make people not think of him as an icon of artwork, but as a scumbag. No, that's not right. You have to be able to say he was both. I agree. You don't have to show his work. Like your point about don't show it. Okay, I'm all right with that. You can say if you want to go find his work, we do not want to give it any more attention, but we have to recognize that this person had an influence. You could do that. It would be like going, okay, you know how Germany bans swastikas, like you can't have anything with swastikas on it, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? Let's not say why. We'll just say there's no swastikas.
But the counter is that they teach the hell out of it.
Well, that's because it's asinine to do otherwse. So what if you went to Germany and we're like, wait a minute, why are there no? I see nothing that even comes close to no reason. We just don't do it. But what?
But here's the thing: one of the curators turned around and said, "This is a landscape that maybe needed a few more guideposts. This exhibition is an experiment in how to make a museum show with a more conversational voice." Right? This is one of them talking about the Picasso show. And I was like, I wonder if there was some people who were screaming for an agenda, and then there was somebody.
Well, I think there must be, but again, to me, the part that just annihilates any validity to it is that quote about Picasso from the curator. That's it. There's your intention, and it's wrong. Done. I don't care anymore.
But that was one of the curators.
Doesn't matter.
3 people.
It doesn't matter. It poisons the whole thing.
Really? You think so?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If you have a malignant intent as part of the foundation, I don't care anymore. No.
Interesting.
And obviously,
I would think that having other voices in the room to counterbalance it would then.
Well, but they obviously didn't. Because it's not done. If one of the counterbalancing points is saying, yeah, we didn't do it right, then guess what? What I just said is correct. Because they knew the show was flawed. So
yeah, and there's a lot of negative reviews of the show. A lot of people, one of the headlines I read that basically said problematic is problematic.
Let me tell you something. If this was some kind of subversive move by Gadsby and the curator who said we made mistakes to undermine and destroy the person with the stupid view, well done. If this was like a 4th level try chess move by those two to sabotage the third one, okay, you have my respect. That is high level pettiness.
The art critic Jason Farago left the Picasso show feeling sad and embarrassed.
Okay, well, he's an art critic.
And he said that the show was disastrous. Yeah, And like the way they language it too, where it says like there were 50 works of Picasso facing off with 49 pieces by contemporary feminist artists, and I'm kind of like, yeah, but aren't you creating a battle?
What is it? A
there?
wrestling match? See, this is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
This
like
is
there's
infantile.
Yeah, like I guess that's
Like
my
I
thing.
said,
It's like
the more you tell me about the show, the more I feel correct in my assessment that once you get that quote, it's all over with. So I'm happy I read nothing about it.
yeah, and it's yeah, it's tough. And I wanted to talk to you about it because I it's always interesting to go into the idea of the art versus the artist, right?
Yeah. And this
you know,
is because I know somebody will misinterpret what I'm saying, by the way. So let's be very, very clear about what I'm saying here because I know it can be misinterpreted. This should not be drawn as an analog to Confederate statues. There's people, oh, well, isn't that erasing history? No, it's not.
No.
still see those
Specifically, what
people
I said
existing.
was this is like trying to re-erect Confederate statues.
No, not you.
Just so
'cause I
you
think
can argue about Confederate
No,
statues.
I'm saying I don't want anybody else to misinterpret when I say don't erase history to mean that we should be leaving these statues. No.
No. You should be teaching the entirety of the
Yes.
Civil War in school.
And if
Not just the
anything,
parts that make the Confederates
would,
look good. Yeah.
That would more lend the reason that you'd want these statues down. Of course, I reiterate my constant policy that there should be no statues of anyone anywhere. I find it creepy, and I don't
like commemorative statues.
nothing of any
Yeah,
person.
okay. That's what you mean. Like no, you're
Yes.
not saying get rid of all the statues in museums. You're just saying
No, not like the David and stuff
Yeah.
like that. I mean, that's
Which,
different.
by the way, David, who's pissed off a ton of people because they're like, "Oh, nudity! Oh my god!" And you're like,
Oh,
"Really?"
don't start me on that. Yeah, that's 4 hours of that. That is so stupid. But look, you got people talking about book burning again in America, so it's all over with, guys.
Oh
Pack it
my
up.
god!
The culture's
I don't
done.
know what's going. I don't know what's going on.
It's all going to
Like-
shit. Don't worry, we'll be dead one day. It's fine. Who cares? So, whatever. But as far as this goes, I'm not shocked by any of the stuff you're telling me about the reactions.
And I don't
what
hate-
you know.
I don't hate Hannah Gadsby. Let's be clear. I don't hate her. It's not like because I know
No,
sometimes you get these,
I think if she has an art history background, it was not utilized properly
I
here.
do think that she is a intelligent, clever person, and I did like half her comedy show. Whenever I've seen her on British panel shows, she's very intelligent. But there is kind of this, there is an anger to her, and it is kind of directed at I guess the white man, the cisgender white man. Of which Picasso is, a huge target, I guess.
Wait, but isn't Picasso Spanish?
Yeah, but you can still be a cisgender white man. Picasso was pretty white.
No, are Spanish people not persons of color?
No, they're white, especially people
Really?
from Spain. Yeah. Listen, okay, hold on.
All right, well,
this
that's
is a
news to
this,
me.
this is a whole other conversation because we're moving someplace that's very multicultural, right? Out of Vermont. And Vermont is fucking white as hell. In fact, for 8 years, the big joke was that I was like the Spanish population of my town, but there's two of us. And my son was like one of the darkest kids in his school. There was one Indian kid and there was one black kid. So he was one of three. And my son is pretty dark, right? He takes kind of after me and my mom. I think he's actually naturally a little darker than me. But my daughter takes more after my wife, and she is fucking blonde, or she was blonde. She's more brown now, but she is white.
Oh, no, you're right. It says it's optional.
Yeah,
Okay.
so people from Spain, right? European, Spanish are white. You get
Maybe. Apparently, they are generally
Well,
generally considered Hispanic, but also maybe included as
Oh,
white. Okay.
If I told a bunch of people from Spain that they were Hispanic, they would fucking yell at me. Anyway, whereas what the Hispanic identity is basically the mixture of the Spanish from Spain
Oh, interesting. This is an
with
Antonio
this-
Banderas thing, apparently.
with the slaves that were brought over, right, and the native people that were here. It is a mixture of those three bloodlines, which creates the Hispanic culture. It's basically the mixing of Spain and the black slaves and the Aztecs and the Mayans and the Incas and all the native cultures that were here. And that's the general concept of what that is the birth of the Hispanic. And within that, you have Hispanics that are more white, and you have Hispanics. You know, my father was very white. My mom is tan in the dead of winter, like dark tan in the dead of winter. And in Cuba today, a lot of the Cubans are black. There's a lot of black Cubans, and it's just, you know, so even, you know, I always hated that when I was younger, when they were like, "Are you white? What was he? Are you white or are you a person of color?" And my mother, who's like the darkest one, was like, "Well, you're white." And then, but then I was kind of sitting there like, "Yeah, but I'm not white. I'm Hispanic." So I had to write, you know, a person of color. My sister was the head of the, oh my God, it was like a multicultural club in her law school.
Oh yeah, there's lots of those. Yeah, I think every place has like every university, everyone has an MCA, multicultural association. Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, my sister leans more towards my dad. She's very white, which is very funny because she used to give me shit and tell me that I was so white. That was actually a quote from her where she was like, "Your problem is you're just so white," and I'm like, "Really?" It's like, I'm so white. Anyway, yeah. So, but up in Vermont, I'm like, I am considered BIPOC.
Oh right, yeah, you told me that. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And what's really weird is that when they were rolling out the vaccines, because I was BIPOC, I was put on a different list.
Yeah, you're a priority list, right?
Yeah, and my stepdaughter was also put on that list, even though she is white. She truly is white. Yeah, it's just yeah. So the whole, you know, speaking of nuance, you know, the nuance of what is Hispanic and what is not. Yeah,
but in terms of the Gatsby thing, I don't really care about her anger and why it justified not. None of that matters, because again, to me, I don't even find her to be the problem. It's the curator who made the comment about let's erase him from history.
Well,
I know that's not exactly what. Well,
yeah,
read
the
quote again.
She basically the quote was basically that he was a bastard and he was a son of a bitch.
Yes.
But at no point did she say she wanted to erase him from history.
I thought you said we had to remove him as an icon of whatever. What was the quote?
Hold on, I'm looking for it.
I want to make sure, because there was a specific part in there that I went, wait a minute, no. I wouldn't have just made this up in my head, I don't think. I mean, I might have. Let's make sure. Let's go to the quote. Go ahead.
The guy was a pervert and a bastard and doesn't deserve time in the sun. Picasso was famously quoted saying there were two kinds of women, goddesses or doormats. He was awful to women, to those who he slept with or those he tried to sleep with. That was the complete quote.
Doesn't deserve time in the sun.
I think that's the part that your brain processed.
Yeah. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means.
But what it's funny because you're giving him time in the sun. I think this is what confuses me, is that you're basically you're
yes,
putting
the existence of the show is itself.
Yeah,
time
you're putting him on the pedestal so that you can then tear him off the pedestal.
Do you know why? Because you can't not do it. Because he is an influential part of art history. You can't not do it. People didn't. This is not somebody who went on Jackass and got kicked in the balls by a donkey, and that's why pop culture knows who he is. Okay, then you've got an argument, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm with you. That's not this. So, again, this wherever it came from. What?
I'm trying to think if there's other artists like Picasso.
Oh, there's many. Who
are like but who are as well known, like, you know, where the name is so, but who was such an awful person.
I don't know of anybody because, honestly, I never got into art history. Picasso, I know about it because it's permeated the pop culture.
I've read a lot about Klimt.
I mean, they made a movie about a husband and wife artist where the husband was a complete and utter bastard, took credit for all her work.
Oh, that's the whole
big eyes
with the big eyes, yeah,
right.
And
so yes, there are other examples. Are they as flamboyantly terrible as Picasso?
No,
I'm sure they are. We just don't know.
Like, I learned a lot about Klimt because he's one of my favorite artists, and learning about him, right? Yeah, you know what? He never married. He liked to bang prostitutes. I give him credit that he never got married because I think he knew that he'd be an awful husband. He also liked to bang his models. So there's a lot of women who he banged other men's wives, right? But he was also a fantastic painter. But it also always amuses me that if I see a painting of a woman, there's a high likelihood that he slept with her.
Look, this is how I'll say it. And this, you can apply this as a blanket statement to everything.
Yeah.
If tomorrow it came out that Katsuhiro Otomo was a pedophile. Right?
Oh, that'd be awful.
It would be awful.
On so many levels.
But one thing I don't think I've ever said about him is, and he's a great person. I
don't know anything about him.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't,
well, that's the thing.
I choose not to know anything about him.
When we talk about comic book artists, right?
Yeah.
So
would I still love Akira? Yes, I'd still love Akira because, as far as I'm aware, unlike if it came out about Stephen King, I'd never read it again because it would explain a few things. You know what I mean? Because then you see it in the work.
But Stephen King is old enough, and nothing has come out yet about him.
Well, but the difference is in that work there is something that you go, oh no, this is. Oh,
wait a minute. Yeah, that's
this
really
is
bad.
This is now like in the work. Akira doesn't have anything like that where it's like there's no thing that you look at and go, oh God.
But here's the thing, like Tom King. I know that Tom King worked for the CIA. I know that he had sometimes some tie with, it was either the Gulf War or some aspect of the Middle East. And that shows in his writing. Knowing that about him shows in his writing. But beyond that, I know nothing about him. I don't know what kind of person he is. You know, I for a long time I knew nothing about Frank Miller until he started getting very vocal about, you know, his how much he hates Muslims.
Well, he tried to make a Batman story where he was killing Muslims, and see that's the difference. There, it's like, okay, no, you can't divorce the two things now because
whereas
the work is the thing.
I know a ton about Alan Moore, and he's fucking crazy.
Yes,
and you know what? He was in a 3-year relationship with his wife and another woman, and his wife left him for the other woman, and I'm like, okay. You know, like I know these things about him, and I know he's fucking nuts, and he believes in magic, and he has, you know, and then I can sit and listen to that man go on about magic for hours. It's actually very mesmerizing. It's almost like listening to you go on about building a computer. It's that same kind of like, like it's. But again, you know, I didn't think that Alan Moore was like the picture of, sanity.
No,
you know,
no, he's never looked it. He's never been it.
You know, and the thing is, and maybe this is like, I mean, this is like thinking all comedians are well adjusted. Listen, at the end of the day, I find that most artists have some kind of, I don't know, damage. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it's small.
Creation is a reaction to something. It's generally not just out of the ether. You don't just suddenly
I don't know anything about Coop, but I'd be curious if there is like some shit in Coop's past that, like, and not in a negative way, but like there's always something in who you are. You know, it's either you know in your personality or something that happened to you. There's always something that it helps. You know,
well, that's why I'm saying I think that most artists of whatever type, they create as a reaction to something. So many comedians will say, "Oh, it's because I was very awkward and social, and then I realized I could make people laugh, and it was a positive response. It got me past whatever."
Yeah.
A lot of artists do it because a traumatic event, or not even necessarily a traumatic event, but there was something where they realized they needed to express themselves in this way as opposed to whatever, theater, whatever it is. So that's what I'm saying is most artists aren't just doing it because they're bored and they just happen to be drawing the Sistine Chapel on a notepad and they hate it.
It's something that they're compelled to do.
It is a reaction. That's why I don't want to say it's even compulsion can be seen as a negative thing, but it's.
Well, when I say compulsion, I mean it's something that you would do even if you didn't get paid.
Okay, yeah. So yes, in that way,
You know,
I agree.
Like you just do it because you like to do it.
Yeah.
You know.
So.
Anyway, so that was that was I suppose that was our opener.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, then I have a quick review for you. I read another one of the Essential Judge Dreads. This time it was Judgment Day, which I'm pretty sure is written by Garth Ennis. Let's see.
Okay.
Let's be.
It's who published it?
Oh, it's it's
well,
one
let
of
me
the.
just I'll do this.
It's 2008. It's one of the 2008s. Aren't they their own publisher?
Yes, you're right. Yes,
yeah.
it is.
Right, so this is their whole collections where they put a whole arc together, that you can read.
Yeah, Judge Dredd, Judgment Day. Yeah.
Yeah, last time I read the Apocalypse War. This time I read my problem is that I'm not getting any like downtime. So like every story I read is like the end of the world and everyone's dying. So like in my head, the Apocalypse War just happened. Half the world is killed, and now we have this book. But like this is a departure in that this gets very like black magic, which I did not realize. I knew that there were psychics and shit like that in the world of Judge Dredd. I didn't realize that they were fucking necromancers. Maybe that's my problem. I mean,
no, I think the better way to think of it is it's a world that has expanded. So there was never any. I mean, because once you have psychics, you've already opened the door to other things, but they never really did much of that in the early years.
The whole plot of this book.
But I mean, Judge Death is.
Yeah, I know is magical, right?
The Dark Judges are interdimensional super beings or something.
Okay, well, and that's So basically, there is this necromancer from the future. He's from the same time frame as Strontium Dog.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. He's an alien super fiend. Quote.
Ooh, an alien super fiend.
Judge Mortis. I'm trying to see, are they all this? Judge Fear is a dark judge. Judge Fire, because he burned down a school with students trapped inside. The census delivers because some students broke noise regulations during what the fuck? Go on, sorry. Jesus.
Yeah, so this necromancer is from the same future as Strontium Dog, which is another 2008.
Oh, okay.
And he basically, he somehow becomes a necromancer, and he wants to build a zombie army and take over the galaxy, essentially, right? That's his thing. And he's got this kind of personality where he's a mean-spirited person. So when he was younger, they give you a great backstory for him, that basically when he was younger, there was a guy who bullied him and he learned necromancy. And when he learned necromancy, he basically made that guy dead alive. So his mind was intact, but he was in a zombie body. And then he basically just kept him as like a dog, even though, and as the guy's body is like slowly decomposing, his mind was fully there. Pretty awful. So this necromancer turns an entire planet into zombies, and the powers that be at that time realize that they've got a problem, and they essentially nuke the planet, just to be sure. And the necromancer manages to escape by traveling back in time. And he travels back to the time of Judge Dredd, and he figures, holy shit, you know what? I don't think anyone here can stop me. So I'm going to take over this planet, turn them all into zombies, and then I'll have my fucking army, and I'll take over this whole galaxy, right? And the people in the future are like, shit, that plan might work. So they send his name isn't Strontium Dog. What's his name? The guy they send back, Johnny Alpha. That's what they call him. So Johnny Alpha is a mutant bounty hunter who's had run-ins with Judge Dredd as well. They do not like each other, which is quite amusing. And so the powers that be send Johnny Alpha back in time to help catch this necromancer. Or they call him a necromagus. Which honestly, there are moments when I'm reading Judge Dredd where I start thinking of Chronicles of Riddick.
Oh sure, yeah.
I don't know if you get
Oh no,
especially since I watched Chronicles of Riddick the other day, and man, I see Judge Dredd in Karl Urban's performance.
Oh yeah,
Mako.
Yes, yes.
Anyway, so essentially now what happens is you have kind of the same format as the Apocalypse War, where all the judges start losing. Every city starts losing. All the dead are coming back to life. There are millions of dead. And the various judges from various cities, mega cities, they don't have the firepower to kill the millions of undead. And so mega cities start to fall. And I one of the things I do like about this book is that the mega cities all realize that they've got a problem they can't face on their own. And it's neat because you get to see the judges from these other areas all working together to try and survive. So you get like what is essentially like the Asian megacities, and then you get the Hispanic megacities, and all these different judges with their different interesting uniforms and personalities all coming together. And then eventually Johnny Alpha shows up, who Dredd dislikes so much. I love it. But the thing is, we're now in the territory of no one can kill Judge Dredd. He's become Batman in this respect, is that he doesn't have any precise power other than the fact that he will just not give up. Like, he has the mutant ability of just never giving up and being damn near unkillable. But the joke is that everybody knows it. Like, so at one point they have a suicide mission and someone needs to lead it, and all the judges from around the world are like, yep, it's definitely Dredd. Dredd should do it. Yep, definitely Dredd. And I can't tell if it's because they want him to die or it's because they know he won't die. But essentially the whole book is just them losing, which is very similar to the Apocalypse War. Losing and losing and losing and losing, until they finally figure out where the Necromagus is. And Johnny Alpha and Judge Dredd and a team of judges from various cities get these experimental mech suits, which I swear to you look like the Fallout 76 power armor suits. And they basically find the cave where he is, and they show up and they fight all these fucking zombies, and then they fight these zombies that sing. It is the weirdest thing in the whole goddamn book. These zombies that keep putting themselves back together, so you can't stop them unless you completely destroy them. But as they're attacking you, they have a sing-along. And so there's like music that goes with like the whole fight sequence. It's very weird. Until it's down to, was it Johnny Alpha and Judge Dredd and one of the other judges, who I can't remember his name now, dealing with the Necromagus, who you realize he has these powers, so he's very difficult to kill, but he's not unstoppable once you're in the room with him. And the conclusion to their situation is kind of fascinating. I won't give it away because honestly, I think it's one of those situations where I could tell you what my interpretation of it is, but I think it's up to the individual to kind of like understand, because there's almost something MacGuffin-y about it, right? But in the end, they do stop him in a way that sucks for him a great deal. And then I guess they get back to trying to repopulate the world because, they lost millions again. Like, I guess this is the farcical nature of the Judge Dredd books and 2000 AD, which is that every time they have one of these like big world stories, they wipe out like half the planet. Like, I don't know where they're getting all these people, unless people fuck like rabbits after every huge event, which it's possible. There was a baby boom after World War II, right? But like, I mean, 2/3 of the judges get wiped out. Half the population of Mega City 1 gets wiped out. 3 megacities have to get nuked because they run out of ammunition. And the other megacities basically realize that if they convert all the people in those cities into zombies, they'll never be able to stop them. So they nuke their own people in an effort to save the rest of the planet. I mean, like, it's just so horrible and terrible every step of the way down. And I think this just must be their formula, where that they just make you feel so terrible and like have no hope until you get to the very end, where Judge Dredd finally gets a little bit of like leverage and he swings that shit like a fucking baseball bat and you're 100% behind him. You're like, yeah, fuck that shit up, Judge Dredd. And I know that this whole comic is kind of based on the premise of fascism, isn't it? Like, it's supposed to be a satire.
There is a strange thing to Judge Dredd where he is simultaneously, as you said, he is essentially a tyrant, one of a series of tyrants in a fascist military state. That's the judges. Because he can judge you, execute you on sight. There is no judicial process. There is no assumption of innocence. This is literally the military state in action. And
Yeah.
yet he is portrayed and revered as a hero. So the
Well,
paradox is supposed to
he's
be
not.
that you
To
know
his-
he's above
his own
reproach,
people,
essentially.
To his own people, like to the civilians, he's not considered a hero.
No, but to the
But to the-
audience sees him as the protagonist.
But the judges, yeah, he's definitely the protagonist, but the judges see him as some kind of superhuman
and
hero.
I believe he has been consistently shown to be incorruptible.
Oh yes,
Unlike
There-
other
that-
judges.
that's,
and that's what I'm
that's the
saying
other
about
aspect.
they position him as a virtuous maybe that's the way to say it, a
not even
virtuous
it's-
character.
He believes the rules are what they are, and he stands by them.
Right. He never questions
You
the
cannot-
rules and he
You
always
cannot
follows
buy
them.
him. You cannot, sway him. And that's Judge Dredd. I mean, he's not human per se. But honestly,
Correct.
you know what I find fascinating about Judge Dredd to some degree, and maybe this is just something I'm picking up more and more lately. We were talking about Batman, and I said the thing about Batman that's so fascinating to me, I've realized now, is that Batman is on the spectrum. Is that there is a level of something to Batman, either an OCD or an autism, something to him that born from his trauma, he has utilized to become this thing. Because Batman is obsessed with the backup plan of the backup plan of the backup plan, and he has this hard time being close to anybody. He's a terrible father figure because he's so focused on, being Batman. I see, and maybe it's because it's a comparison to Batman, but I see some of that in Judge Dredd. What makes Judge Dredd so powerful is his singular, unending focus. The rules are the rules, and I will not be stopped from carrying out their
Yeah. Yes.
And in that respect, it is that sort of OCD obsession. I will not stop. These are the rules. And it makes him appear almost superhuman. And yet at no point he is experiencing the same pain as everybody else. He gets tortured, he gets beaten up. It's his ability to ignore it in the bigger picture of what he thinks is justice that is kind of so fascinating about the character. And the fine line he walks, being a hero, the protagonist in what would otherwise be a very gloomy fascist future, right?
Yeah.
So
No, yes, absolutely. No, I've always been fascinated by this character and the way that he's positioned and his popularity because he is not a character you would actually want to be in the world with.
No,
You would be
you wouldn't,
terrified of his very. He would be like
his
Batman
presence.
is in the Batman movie, where as soon as you hear he's around, everybody just starts running.
Yeah, his very presence in the room is dangerous. He can kill you. He can kill you and walk away with it. Now,
Yeah, he's
granted,
a dictator.
He's
one of a
will
series of
not kill
dictators.
you unless you break the rules.
Right, but he has persecuted people for ridiculous rule breaking. So it is a parody
Yeah.
that has somehow become popular.
Yes.
Yes.
So I did enjoy the book, but if I read one more of these, and it's the same formula, then I'm going to lose interest. And I kind of had this Conan's a great example of this, where there was, when I was reading the Conan books, the short stories, there was a while there where I was like, okay, there's definitely a recipe for this. You shouldn't read these back to back. You know what I mean? If you want to enjoy Conan stories, spread them out. And I think that maybe Judge Dredd is like that, where it's don't read these back to back because there's definitely a format they follow. It's lose until Judge Dredd gets the perfect piece of leverage, and then he fucking destroys everybody, and you're kind of like, okay, you've had this shit kicked out of you for this long, you deserve it. Destroy them. You know what I mean? But this book does have one of the best last frames of a comic book that I have read. And you can probably find it online, but the last frame of the book is essentially that the only people left are Johnny Alpha and Judge Dredd. And they're in the middle of the wastes near one of the Asian megacities. and they've stopped the bad guy, and everything appears to be good, but they have no transport. They have nothing, and Johnny Alpha says, "It's a long way to Hondo, Dredd. The desert's going to be full of creeps and bushwhackers all the way." And Dredd says, "Yeah. Well, you tell me, Alpha." And the next frame is just the two of them walking in kind of like the desert, looking angry and pissed off with like bullet wounds and all their armor. And Judge Dredd says, "Who the hell's going to mess with us?" And it is the perfect like final frame because the two of them look like they're ready to kill somebody and they're all banged up. But it is a great, really great final frame. I saw it the other day online. And I was going to try and find it to see if I could show you because I thought you would enjoy it. Let's see if I can find it really quick.
I'm sure it's there somewhere. Judge Dredd Judgment.
Oh, there it is. I found it. There it is. All right, hold on. I'll send you the picture. I just got to grab that and move this over here. Come on. Play ball. Yeah, I can play ball. Come on. Come on.
I found it. I've seen it. Oh, yes. I've seen. This is a very well-known.
Yeah, the two of them walking.
Yes, in the mist with the two of them where they're walking next to each other all shot up. Yes, I've seen this.
Yeah. I love that frame. It's like the end of a Stallone-Arnold movie.
Yep.
You know, especially since, like, they don't like each other. Like, it's not like they're friendly buddies. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, I enjoy that quite a bit. And I am going to take some time before I read another book, one of these, because if it is a formula that they go back to over and over again, then I'd rather space it out and enjoy it. I mean, sometimes some of these books are like that, where you need to give them room to breathe. But they are enjoyable. I mean, it's they're brutal and they're vicious and horrible decisions have to be made. I mean, but I will say this, the art in this one fluctuates far more than the art in the other book that I read. So the last one was The Apocalypse War. The Apocalypse War, the art is very consistent all the way through, whereas this one, about halfway through, it starts to fluctuate between like kind of more realistic and then almost more like they're doing what do you call it? When they draw an exaggerated version of a person.
Oh, a caricature.
Caricatures. They almost start to look like caricatures at times.
Yeah.
Like the chief, especially with like the chief judge at one point, like early on he looks kind of like gruff and whatever, but as the book goes on, it's like his nose gets bigger, his chin gets bigger, like he gets very exaggerated. And I know that there's like 4 different artists who worked on this one, possibly more. Yeah. So this one has a lot more fluctuation in kind of the look of it. Not so much a Judge Dredd, because in the end he's a helmet with a frown, but like everybody else around him. At least with Johnny Alpha, you can see his face. He's got no pupils, but at least you can see his face. So, yeah, I would definitely tell people to read. I still think these are great to read. The Essential Judge Dredds and 2000 AD in general.
Yeah,
you know, they don't feel like other books on the show.
No, they have a very they have their own character. That's what I like about them, and they've managed to maintain it for a very long time, which is impressive. So,
and they don't let up on their meanness. Like the books are.
No, they do not.
Yeah, they're tough and they're mean, and it really makes me wish that Carl Urban could do another Judge Dredd that expanded beyond the building.
I agree.
Because these stories are so vicious and so epic.
Yep. You could easily make these into anthology TV series where it's all the different, pick and choose. They could do lots of stuff. There's lots of material to choose from and a lot of good material.
I suppose that's where it ends up. I mean, at some point they're gonna mine everything that's come before.
I would hope so. At some point they do a good job of it. I'd like to see it. Sure.
I mean, and Carl Urban seems to like doing TV because he's still doing The Boys.
Yeah. Yeah, so, he's talked about
and he'd
have no problem coming back to Dredd, so maybe somebody will be smart and do it. We'll see.
Well, what have you got for me, Mr. Wizard?
I actually have 2 reviews. I forgot there was something else. I don't know that either of them are going to be particularly long.
There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't have to be a long review.
No, there's not. So the first one is for a actual new show that is from this year called Jury Duty.
Oh, I read about this.
You know what? I actually met
Did you
somebody
watch?
here. Oh, I didn't tell you about this. I met a guy who works
Yeah.
on the other side of sound from Snedecor.
Yeah.
Snedecor is the one who produces the sounds. This guy is the one who makes sure he takes notes of every scene in a movie or a show. And says, okay, he's tapping a pen. I'm going to need a sound of a pen tap. And you know what I mean?
Yeah, he takes note. Yeah.
And he worked on the show. And I had heard about this show already because it sounded like an interesting idea. But, he was talking about it. I'm like, okay. And then I saw it pop up on a bunch of lists.
My only problem with this show is that, so the premise of this show, for anyone who doesn't know, is that essentially they have a guy they brought in who thinks that he's got jury duty, right?
Correct. Yes.
But everyone there is an actor except for him. So the whole thing is staged.
Everything is
as an experiment to see kind of what happens to him.
Yes.
And then they've thrown some curveballs in there where James Marsden.
Oh, I forgot he was in it. So when he showed up and I realized he was in it the whole time, he's great.
So that's
he's
Teddy.
Great.
It's Teddy.
Cyclops. That's what they identify. Right? Somebody says, "Oh, you're." Yeah. At one point, they're calling him X-Man. They keep calling him X-Man.
So James Marsden's in there, and he's playing this like exaggerated, insane version of himself. So that's the weird thing. So because this guy, he's meeting an actor, but the actor is basically playing a weird version of himself to a real person. My only issue with the premise is, at some point, did the guy not realize that he was in this situation? Do you know what I mean?
Well, no. What they show is he never realized. Although there are points where he is saying, along the lines of this kind of crap could only happen in L.A. with L.A. people. Which to anybody, it's kind of, you could say the same thing about San Francisco, New York. There are people from those areas.
There's types.
Yeah, there's types, and so that is. But there are points where it is interesting because they do a whole in the last episode. They show you what they were doing behind the scenes, and some of the stuff they had to scramble because he essentially guessed at what their plot line for the trial was. And the producers are shown backstage going, how is he reading the script? What are we going to do? There's a point where they call an actress by the actual name and they have to cover it. So there were points of failure that could have happened at multiple times. The way that they, I think, best got around it is they sequester them. Marsden creates a situation where they have to be sequestered. Because they said there was no way they could make it work if they could not isolate and control the environment. So there's a lot of good sleight of hand in how they manufacture situations and different things. But it's a fascinating type of thing that you could probably only do once, because now that this is done, everybody, if something like this happens, will think they're on it. They'll think. I don't know that you could ever replicate this like this. But
am I on a TV show? Well, no, this is reality.
Yes, yes, and that's he does say at one point, he's like, I cannot believe how many crazy things are happening. I think what they did was they broke sequester or something like that, where they said you have a day off because they had to figure out how to re-engineer things because it was he was getting too close to something, so they had to figure out how the hell they were going to handle it. So it could have fallen apart at multiple times. But it is a really good show.
But having watched it from a narrative approach, you enjoy it.
Yeah, because honestly, the only thing that sits in the back of my mind, but so far I cannot find any evidence of this, is he has himself said, I was not always this good a person. So at least that I'm like, okay, because he said if some of if people who knew me before watched this, they would not understand who I was because I was not always this good of a person. Because he really does come off as a genuinely really good person, because it's essentially it's a Willy Wonka test. It is a test of whether he is actually, they specifically put scenarios to see if he would help people or not. He always did. He covered for people on things. He always took the noble approach, the virtuous choice.
I wonder if did they ever say how they vetted to get.
They said they did Craigslist things about there was some kind of thing for people who would be willing to be filmed as part of a documentary about being in a jury. And then what they did was, they even went to the level of when they showed it in the jury room. they made it where he could only have sat in one of 4 seats because they knew what scenarios they could run next to those seats to get him to see it. It's very, very tightly. It's like Truman Show level type stuff. So I don't know for sure that there isn't more to his backstory. There doesn't appear to be from what I've seen, but, a year from now we could find out that, there was something going on. If it is as presented, which it appears to be, it is a remarkably positive show in the fact that he seems to be a legitimately good person who made the right decisions at just about every step of the way, and is rewarded for it. So I would say watch it if it's at all interesting. I only knew about the premise. I even forgot, like I said, Marsden was in it. But my wife and I both really liked it.
I only know about it because I read an article.
I kept seeing it. I didn't even see that. Yeah. I showed up on 2 or 3 lists of, this is a really good show you should watch. Oh, okay, fine. Let's watch it. We'll watch the first couple episodes. That's honestly, you're 10 minutes in to see.
I've always liked James Marsden.
He's great in this.
Yeah, he's pops
up
in weird shit. Yeah, that's the thing is that they tried to sell him as as a heartthrob kind of thing in Cyclops, right? Like he was supposed to be like the good-looking boyfriend. But the movie that I love him best in is, oh God, what's it called? Where is it Sex Ride or Joyride? Where he plays
that is a focal point of this goddamn show.
Which one is it?
The Sex Drive, or Sex Ride, or whatever.
Yeah, where his brother steals the car, and the whole movie is him going to find. Dude, he is so fucking hilarious in that movie.
There is a huge bit about that in this, where the guy brings in the Blu-ray to have him sign it. He's like, holy shit, this movie, man, I didn't think you were going to bring this movie to sign. He's like, they couldn't make this movie today. Like, he was going on.
I fucking love that movie.
Yeah, he was talking
and
about
he is hilarious in that. And the fucked up thing is that, like, he shows up in things like Westworld, and he's very good. He's always very good. But I love it when they let him be funny, because he can be very funny,
Yeah.
So and that's why I was debating watching this, even though it's not my usual TV fare. I like James Marsden.
It's only 8 episodes long, so it's not very long. I think each episode is, I think they're like 30 or less. So it's not very long. It's not necessarily always funny, because at times it is presenting a legitimate moral case that is interesting to consider. So it's not necessarily that every episode is hilarious, although Marsden is funny almost all the time. But there is also this interesting thing of his thought process and what they're presenting to him. So I think it's worth seeing. I'm not going to tell you. I don't know that everybody will react to it the same way. I thought it was, and my wife agreed, was very good. It's pretty short. Like I said, it's only 8 episodes. And if you have Amazon Prime, there's no ads. If you don't, you could still watch it for free on their Freevee service. So you can watch it either way. It was no ads for us because we have Prime, which is like 80% of the population does at this point. So there is that avenue. It's worth watching, I think. Whether it's necessarily the best of 2023, well, we got another half of a year to see. I don't know if it'll still be on that list at the end of the year. But I mean, the lists usually say so far. I don't know if it will hold up to that. We'll see. I had a good time with it. It's an interesting thing if it is as presented. That's always the caveat now with any of this stuff you have to do. But as far as an interesting premise for a show that they executed really well, because like I said, that last episode gets into how many places it could have failed and almost did, and what they had to do to kind of scrabble to keep it together, including because there's a part where Marsden kind of pulls a really dick move on everybody. And they said, okay, if he reacts really negatively, we have to have Marsden come back and apologize. And he did, and so Marsden shows back up. But if he hadn't, then they wouldn't have had him come back. So they were even planning for like choose your own adventure. Like, okay, if he takes this well, we do this. If he doesn't, we have to be ready for this. That's interesting too, to think about all the stuff they had to do. And in fairness, even with the bizarrety of the things going on, if you're just a normal person and you believe, I mean, Marsden is the only known actor. And I knew one other guy in it from Parks and Rec. That would have given it away for me if I was the person. But some of them were non-actors. Some of these people were writers, or just like one guy was I think he was an instructor at like UCLA or something. And he just went in because he thought it'd be fun. And they were like, yeah, we'd like you to do it. So they were smart that they didn't use a lot of well-known actors, well-known faces. And that also helps it. That a lot of these people looked like they were just ordinary people. And only one person besides Marsden was a recognizable actor. To me, anyway. but maybe most people wouldn't even have recognized him. So, like I said, fun show, you know, because you can watch it for free, or like I said, if you got Prime, then you won't even have ads, and it's relatively short, and it actually has a pretty, I guess the word would be heartwarming outcome, which is unusual. Where I was like, oh, you know what, maybe not, maybe 1 out of every 100 people isn't a piece of shit, petty, selfish, cruel scumbag. It's nice that there's 1 out of 100. So there's that. So there's a little positivity for you. It's presented in the worst possible way from me presenting it. The other thing I wanted to talk about, and this is niche as hell. So there's very few people are going to watch this or even would want to try. But one of the films that Len and I are going to be reviewing for his show is a shot-on-video movie from 1985 called Justice Ninja Style.
Oh, God.
Okay.
Hold on.
It's
1985.
on YouTube. Justice Ninja Style. Who they somehow got James Earl Jones to narrate the trailer for. I cannot imagine how that happened, but it is in fact him. It is him. You can tell by the voice, and he is credited.
Okay.
Are you watching the trailer?
No, I'm reading what this movie's about.
It is. So shot on video is a whole subgenre that is literally people who are making movie on camcorders and home film or whatever movie equipment. And it is almost uniformly awful. Generally, it is narratively and technically a complete mess.
Sounds like a Western with ninjas.
It kind of... there's almost no story. Here's the story. Opens with 2 women driving, and their car breaks down. 2 cops show up. Cop attempts to rape woman, and when she resists, he hits her with a nightstick and somehow instantly kills her with a glancing blow. Guy is jogging by who's just opened a martial arts studio, which has no factor on the rest of the movie. There's really almost no point to him having a martial arts studio except for one scene. And they grab him and say, oh, he literally goes up to him and says, hey, I hear you're a martial arts instructor. Can you show me how I can use my nightstick more effectively so he can get his prints on it? And he's like, gotcha. You raped and killed this woman. Now we're arresting you. They throw him in jail. And then for some reason, a Superman-like ninja, because I guess he just knows when injustice is happening, a ninja who looks like he is probably a 50-year-old white guy, from what I could tell, suddenly starts to try to help him. And the movie is basically about the ninja showing up to help him when he gets in a tight spot as he's on the run from the cops. And then you find out that he is the descendant of a Japanese family who's been in the town for centuries, but they never explain anything about what he's doing or why. You never see his face. It's the most ramshackle, thin story possible. It's nothing. I mean, it is serviceable. It's a 1-2-3 story. There's nothing to it. The music is made on a Casio keyboard that was probably bought in a gift shop, very clearly. The acting is...
So, wait, I have one burning question. Why did you watch this?
Okay, hold on. I'm going to get to that. There's one element that makes it different. Acting all over the place, but generally poor. However, the camera work for what looks like to be a camcorder, including the editing, which is usually where these things fall apart. Now, this is definitely a what's the word? Grading on a curve. This is definitely grading on a curve. But for some of the shot of, and I barely have watched any because it's generally intolerably bad. I mean, it's generally just so poor that you are watching to laugh at it.
Which version did you watch? Did you watch Ninja the Ultimate Warrior, or did you watch...
The one I watched was about 1 hour and 10 minutes. I think the length is the difference. I think I watched the extended one.
Because it was re-edited at some point.
Okay. Well, I don't know because I never seen... I only was able to find one copy of it chopped up into 11 pieces on YouTube. Because the only other way you could do is buying a Blu-ray, which I'm not going to do. Len did. I'm not.
The cover of the Blu-ray, by the way, is awful. It looks like something a child painted.
Yeah.
Honestly, if you go to IMDb, you can see it.
So what's the length of which version? Does it say? The
Ultimate Warrior version, I think, is just... I don't think they're the same length. I think it was just edited differently.
Geez, I don't know how you could edit this differently because it's pretty linear. I mean, it's a pretty straightforward edit. It seems like.
Okay, so the film was originally released in late '85, but re-edited by Ron D. White in 1989 as Ninja: The Ultimate Warrior, in hopes of finding a nationwide distribution. It doesn't say what the differences were.
Oh, interesting. Well, you know what? Hold on it. I would bet that I think it's Vinegar Syndrome did the release. Blu-ray, I think, because he bought it. Here it is. Okay, so let's see. They usually tell you the differences here. Extended cut transferred from the original 86 minutes. I believe mine was around 86 minutes, so I believe I watched the longer version then. Because it doesn't say. I have a hunch I watched the longer version because I would guess that.
I'm looking at these features, and I'm kind of like, why would you watch any of these features?
Well, no, because like I said, the one thing that is a little bit better than most of this, because most of it is garbage. Most shot on video, you're watching it as a joke. Honestly, that's what most people. I don't care what they say. Most people are watching this as a joke because it is laughable. Because it's the same kind of crap most people did if they had a camcorder and they had friends who wanted to make movies. You make junk movies. But this one actually has some good camera work. There's actually thought behind the shots. Now, it doesn't necessarily stop the soundtrack from sounding like doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, literally like that, which is what it sounds like. It's not going to make the actors any better, because you can't. The dialogue at times is hilariously bad, where somebody said, the cop says, you're resisting arrest. The guy says, I'm resisting the beating, and then fights him.
Apparently, the entire town was behind him. He had support.
Well, that's very clear, because there's shots that's like, well, you can't run around and get, like, he's filming from the rooftop shots. This is what's different. Most of this stuff looks like you're literally running around with a camera doing whatever, somebody's not going to say, get off my lawn to do. This clearly, he's got real cop cars. He has access to what looks a real jail cell. So probably the local police station. That's what I mean is those parts are better and they make it watchable, because if it was literally a cardboard jail cell door, you would just laugh at it.
How they got James Earl Jones for the trailer.
I would be fascinated. I don't know.
I don't know. Find that out.
Unless they presented this as a rough cut and said, "Oh no, the final version will be much cleaner, and we'll pay you $100." But if the whole town was behind him, maybe somebody knew somebody. That sometimes happens, where somebody knows somebody who can. Oh, James Earl Jones, you just want to do a voiceover for a trailer? Sure, he'll do it for $200.
Oh my God, that's one of the selling points for the DVD.
Is that it's him? Yeah.
If you also want to know how an obscure 1985 regional ninja movie got Darth Vader to narrate their trailer at the height of his fame, then you need to order your copy and watch the brand new interview to find out.
Yeah, yeah. It's probably somebody. It's probably somebody. No. Yeah. Well, I'm glad I watched it because I was expecting it to be trash the whole way through.
Yeah.
And I really was at a point going, man, this guy, whoever the director was, he has the eye that a director should have. He's setting up interesting shots, angles. He's getting different locations. He knows how to move the camera. I don't think the director
ever did any movies after this.
Well, that's very possible. I mean, look, you can create what's his face wrote the one book and vanished, right? Can happen.
Yeah.
So maybe, but at the time, was this buried in the sea of much better stuff in video stores? I'm sure it was, and it could have been as simple as that. Where this was to be his demo reel and it never got any traction. That happens all the time.
He only ever directed this.
I'm not surprised. But when you watch it, like I said, everything else is exactly what you would expect out of shot on video. So I'm not trying to tell you that this is necessarily a buried gem that you're going to come out and go, wow, everybody in this was stuff. No, they're not. But if you've ever watched any shot on video, or if you made movies yourself and then years later went back and watched them when you thought they were great when you were a kid and went, oh no, when you watched them later, which I've done. Or I did. I don't have it anymore, but I remember watching stuff I made when I was younger at my parents' house, and I'm like, oh God, I thought this was smart. This at least has that going for it, and so there are people who like this kind of stuff. It's not really my thing. I've watched maybe 4 or 5 shot on video things total, maybe 6, less than 10, I'm sure. There's libraries of this stuff that some people just eat this up. This, when I did my short review, I said this is a cut above what is normal for this subgenre. I'm not saying it competes anywhere with even a no budget, professional crew. It's not anything like that, but it is interesting to see that when there's like 5 elements to a shot on video, and one of them seems much better than it should be. That does make it noteworthy, but not. I would say for most people, probably not. It won't overcome things. You'll probably still just laugh at it. But if you're somebody like me who likes to watch something and try to see the good in it, that is the good in it, is that the camera work, and as you said, the thing with the town, that makes complete sense. I didn't know that, but that makes complete sense, because I thought, wow, how was he allowed to go up on the roof of this building to get this shot? How did he get access to the jail cell? Did he know the cops or something like that? Because that's usually what it is. So the fact that the town was in it with him makes a lot of sense, because he does have access to places that, again, most shot on video will sneak into a place like a pizza place, the local Pizza Hut, and you'll see a low angle where they're holding it under the table, pointing up somebody's nose as they record the dialogue. You know what I mean? That's missing from this. This is actually framed, shot, blocked out pretty well. There's a fight scene that's, I mean, they throw a guy around who's not landing on a mat. So, I mean, they're doing stunt work. It's not necessarily great fight choreography, but at one point, a large guy is picked up by the ninja. I mean, you can clearly see the guy kind of pushing himself up to help him, but that's okay. And then he throws him on the ground, and he throws him on the ground from above his head. If that was done wrong, that guy's dead. He lands on his neck, he's paralyzed. So I'm like, okay, you know, and it's the editing is not terrible for what looks like in-camera editing. Like I said, that's the one thing where I went, okay, it kept me interested because I recognized that it was better than it should have been, or better than is normal for this particular type of film. So I'm not saying everybody should go out and watch it, but if you have an interest in shot on video and you like to see better examples of it, this is probably the best one in terms of direction that I think I've seen. That's not saying much because I don't have a wide exposure to it and very little interest in it, to be honest about it. But I was entertained by the fact that it had a consistent quality at one aspect that generally is missing. I don't know if that's necessarily a recommendation, but it's certainly a piece of interest for the right connoisseur. So again, Justice Ninja Style 1985. You can watch it on YouTube for free. It's in 11 parts. Sorry. You will figure out that, and it was uploaded in reverse chronological order. So you have to start at the last clip and go backwards. They're about 6 to 7 minutes each. But like I said, pay attention if you watch it. Pay attention to the camera work, because it's interesting. That it's the thing with the town now explains that. That would be necessary for some of the shots in this thing and some of the locations this person had access to, which honestly, if I was a filmmaker, a quote unquote filmmaker running around with a camcorder or whatever, I would love the fact that I even got to do it. So maybe the guy never directed again, but who cares? He got the whole town to help him with a movie, and I'm sure a lot of them are in it. And if I made this with a town I lived in, I would actually probably, even if it's crappy, oh, let's watch it. Like, it would be a Rocky Horror type of thing for that town. It'd be like, oh, everybody made a movie.
Yeah.
You know, it's not so shoddy and embarrassing and awful that you wouldn't want to watch again. It would be a fun thing to kind of hoot and holler at and say, oh, look, there's Jim who worked at the hardware store, you know, blah, 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 you know, stuff like that. Like I said, if you're into shot on video, and there are people who are, I'm just not one of them. But if this is your thing and you've never seen this, this may actually surprise you in terms of its direction. Everything else is going to be pretty much what you would expect. There's, you know, I don't think there's anything. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that's unusual about it besides the direction. No, the rest of it is pretty standard shot on video stuff. Some great one-liners, awful dialogue-wise, so that is funny to laugh at. That's just, you know, that's just typical of this type of thing. But the direction does stand out, so I have to give it that credit. So that's why I wanted to mention it. Like I said, I generally don't like shot on video because it is so amateurish at times that, you know, you could laugh at it, and a lot of people like to do that. And I find that to be not very entertaining for me. I prefer to find stuff like Neon City where I'm like, oh, I've never seen this before, and this is Michael Ironside, and it's really fun. That's the kind of stuff I like. But this one, yes, you'll laugh at some of it, most of it, really. But I think if you like this stuff, this would be a legitimately good entry in terms of shot on video. Nothing past that. But so, and if anybody knows of any other shot on video that's like that has, whether it's acting or something unique about it, I will watch that. I'll always be interested to see something that has a good quality, because I don't think there's that much of it. So, and that's it. So, like I said, for the right person, might be worth checking out. I'm not going to necessarily tell you to go run out and buy the Blu-ray. I don't know if I will ask Len if the story behind this is worth buying it for. I doubt it. It's probably such a minute piece of trivia. It's literally going to be something like James Earl Jones' cousin's second niece lived in this town for 3 months, and they asked her to do them a favor, and she said, "Sure, I'll ask Uncle whatever."
Yeah, I mean, it could be just like that. Yeah,
I have a hunch that's it. They may embellish it into some huge story, but honestly, I have a hunch it's that. Or they just lied to him and said, "We have a major picture deal coming in. We'd like to pay you $1,000 to do this," and they cobbled together $1,000. Who the hell knows? You know, I mean, whatever. Like I said, I'll ask Glenn because he did buy the Blu-ray, so he will know. And we will be reviewing it at some point in the relatively near future. So like I said, for Shot on Video Hounds, if you've seen this, I'd be curious. Probably most people listening have not. And if you do like this stuff, I would say if you haven't seen it, you should check it out just because, like I said, the direction feels like it's better than this deserves. Everybody else, don't bother. I mean, unless you just want to laugh at it, but don't bother because I'm not going to be able to sell you on this being. I mean, when you can hear the fuzzy camcorder sound, you know what you're in for. That's all I'll say. But Jury Duty, I would say, is another one where I think for most people that's probably going to be an entertaining single watch because honestly, the gimmick's out the window once you've watched it once. The gags are funny, but I don't know if they really hold up on repeat viewings. But I think it's an interesting experiment. I think that show pulled off that particular reality trick, which I think is a one trick pony. I think they did it well. So I would say that's a fun one, especially because it does have a very, I think, positive and actually optimistic ending. And then Justice Ninja Style, if you want to watch a Shot on Video ninja film that has better direction than you would normally expect, then it might be worth your time. Outside of that, no, don't bother. And that's it. So read Judge Dredd Judgment Day, watch Jury Duty, maybe watch Justice Ninja Style if you're into that stuff. But not everybody. And that's it. And whatever you do, enjoy your weekend, and we'll be back again next week. Oh, actually, Lando won't, because he's going to be doing his moving stuff. So, bit of a teaser, I guess. My wife and I are going to be doing a whole episode on the Good Place, the show, the sitcom, the 4-season, I think it was 4-season NBC show, which is Kristen Bell, Ted Danson, and other people whose names I'll mispronounce, so I'm not going to bother because I know I can pronounce their names. So that'll be next week. So that'll be another one with me and my wife, which some people really seem to like, which is good because I like doing those. And Lando doesn't necessarily watch a lot of the stuff that I watch, so I can't necessarily do an episode where we break down I mean, listen, we could do a Farscape special at some point. I actually wouldn't mind doing something like that where it's like, hey, let's.
Oh, but like a show?
Yeah, just a whole episode about what makes Farscape so great. Because at this point now, this is what's interesting. There are going to be people who've never watched it because now that's kind of old sci-fi to them. You know, that show is what, 20-something years old now? Right?
Oh, God, you're going to make me feel old.
Well, you are. So am I. What do you want? I mean, come on. That's just reality. But somebody else, here's something funny. Somebody on Twitter sent me a message, said, you and Lando should write a book about the movies because he knows I can't write. But he's like, you should do a book about the low budget but high effort type of movies. And I'm like, well, yeah. And he said, Lando could write it or help you write it. I'm like, I'd do it. I don't know if Lando has any interest, but I would certainly. I've never thought about putting this stuff into a book, but could I write synopses of movies and have you like polish them up? Sure, I wouldn't care about doing it. I don't know if anyone cares.
You see, the problem is the enjoyment is the delivery of the synopsis.
Yeah, I know. That's the tricky bit. So unless they just transcribe,
I mean, like
things.
that's difficult to translate into
unless it is just a transcription. I don't know how else it would be done.
Yeah, and the thing is, and still, but when you're reading something like that, you know,
I said it's an interesting idea. I don't know if it would work.
You should do a voice transcription of one of your fives or something like that, and see how it reads back to you.
Yeah, I could do that. Yeah, I could run through a program.
Because I know that how I talk and how I write are two different things.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
You know, and they have to be because it's a different medium.
Right.
It's a different way. You
Hey, I've been working on doing a Total Recall 2070 thing for at least 2.5, 3 years now, and I can't get it right. And I'm just like trying to get the wording right. So I know what it needs.
Oh, like a write up or
like a literal like I want to make a video with clips and everything because there aren't any. I've looked. There's barely. I think there were 2 YouTube videos I saw about the show, and they were both maybe 9 minutes long, and really were just kind of summaries. I want to do a complete kind of deep dive on the show. Going through the episodes, the whole thing. I've written it up. I have it written up. It's just not done.
Just the episode where they all get gassed with their fears.
Oh, yeah.
And the robot basically sees himself as a machine.
I guess I should send you the right.
That was a great show that basically used boobs to keep it on Cinemax.
Yes.
Like I give them a lot of credit. And that's what did I watch recently? Where I was like, I remember that the Demon Lover movie. I told you about the '80s movie about when a man becomes horny, he becomes a demon. The fact that there is no nudity in that movie, I'm like, wow, that's amazing.
It's Demon Lover. Demon Lover is a different movie with Gina Gershon. So we have to make sure we get the right title.
But the whole thing is like this idea that a sci-fi show like that kept itself on the air by essentially just injecting nudity into it. Unnecessary nudity just to keep itself on TV.
And the barest Total Recall by mentioning Mars here and there, but really there's nothing.
Well, because it wasn't. It was a Blade Runner show.
Exactly. But that was and they had some clips that they could use. So, yeah. But that's what I mean about it. I understand how difficult it is to write it because I've been working on that forever and I have not finished it yet. Forget even the video parts of it because I got to figure out how to do that because I never do that stuff. But I really want to do it because I think the show deserves it and nobody else has done it.
Yeah, see, I'm going to tell you what I told you years ago. The type of person that you are, don't write it, talk it.
No, I've been doing that, but even doing that, I keep going back and going, I don't know if I don't know if I like the way that sounds when I say it because I know I'm going to have to say all this.
Yeah, well, I mean,
so it's constant refinement.
You do well, that's revision, my friend. That's revision.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. I'm not great at it. That's why it's taking me so long.
You read my book once. I read my book close to like 500 times before. Yeah. And
at some point I'm going to give this to you when I finish this thing. When I feel this thing is in a place where I'm finished with it, I'm going to give it to you and say, all right, read this and see if it's junk.
Let's see if it makes sense.
Well, yeah, because I'm the only one looking at it. And, I can give it to my wife. And
other eyes. Like, right, okay. But you know what? Honestly, it might be good to give it to her as well because sometimes giving it to somebody who has no interest will open up. I can do that too.
But she will spare my feelings.
Oh yeah.
You won't. I already know that.
And that's one of the things I love about my wife. My wife has never spared my feelings when it's come to my writing.
No, my wife won't.
And she's an editor, so that's kind of her thing. But man, she has leveled me a few times.
No, she won't. She will soften any criticism too much. I already know that. So,
it's only through our mistakes do we grow.
I agree. I just don't think she's the one to point them out to me. I think you're better for that. So. Also, your writing background is better to identify. I mean, the one trick I always avoid, and I'm going to shut up after this because this is the longest outro we've ever done. But the one thing I'm really good about is not repeating words very often in like a paragraph. That's one thing I pick up on people that do a lot when they write things is they say the same phrases and words multiple times. And they never think to, look at a thesaurus and say, okay, I'm saying something similar, but I don't want to use the exact same phrase. So,
I don't know if it matters if that word is dead on to what your idea of it is.
I'm not. Well, I'm talking about. Okay, here's the sentence, or here's 3 sentences. Long ago, people would ride boats across the ocean. That's something people did long ago. Now it's like, okay, don't say long ago twice like that. That's too close.
Oh yeah. Don't. That's
what I'm saying.
You don't need to say it again. Like you already said that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, you're not talking about words. You're talking about like repeating the same idea over.
Yeah.
And over
Okay. Yes. Then that.
Repeated.
But but that is usually done through a repetition of the same words because they're trying to fill space, as opposed to saying this is how it was done throughout history.
Yeah.
Now, however, blah 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 blah.
Don't ever write like you're writing for a class.
Yeah. That's the only writing thing I ever really picked up where I'm like, I don't make that mistake. I know I make a lot, but I don't do that. At least
everybody makes mistakes.
Not as transparently.
You know what?
I'll say.
You know what? I would love to read a rough draft of a Stephen King story.
Oh, sure. Yeah. He's probably
especially those early ones where he was like smacked down on coke and booze.
He's probably released it somewhere. There's probably excerpts of that stuff somewhere because he's done so many things about his writing and everything. I would be very surprised.
I would love to see the evolution. Yeah. You know, I think that would make a lot of people feel good about their writing.
I'm sure it would. And on that note, don't use repetitious ideas in multiple sentences in the same paragraph. Have a great weekend, and we'll be back Lando and I, in 2 weeks. My wife and I will be on next week, so have a wonderful weekend, no matter what you watch or do. Visit OzoneNightmare.com to subscribe to new episodes, browse through our back catalog, or to find links to support the show. Follow @OzoneNightmare on Twitter for the latest episode postings and other show information. If 280 characters just isn't enough, you can always email us, theozonenightmare@gmail.com. The opening theme for the show is provided by Heartbeat Hero. The closing theme is provided by Ogre. Please visit and support these artists using the links in the show notes for each episode.